what really came up for me was that I can trust myself. I can trust myself to be in this relationship if this is the relationship that I want to be in. If I can trust myself that I want to be with him because he feels good, because we have our values align, because we have children together, because we love each other, because I think he's the hottest man on earth, I can trust myself that this is the relationship that I want to be in and I can commit to that, right? And if I'm receiving the same level of commitment, then we can trust that this is what we want and what we want to create. And as we're creating this, there are no rules to what this is going to look like. Hello, and welcome back to the Jackie Stewart Podcast. Today feels really, really special because this is the first time that I'm recording an episode on video because I have the desire to also stream it on YouTube so that people can actually watch the conversation. And there is a whole other reason why this episode is really special, and that is because I have already teased about it on Instagram. I will be sharing the story behind my almost divorced last year. And the story itself honestly is not even all that. It's really the beauty that came that happened because of the almost divorce, because of that crisis, right? So, but I will be sharing a little bit of both. I'm really excited to finally be sharing that. It is kind of like opening up um, the door to topics that I want to continue to talk about here on my podcast. So I'm just really excited about it. Before we get started, though, I do want to say if you have been enjoying listening to my episodes, I hope you follow me. Please subscribe on Apple or Spotify, wherever you listen to. Go follow me on Instagram at the.jackiestewart. Tag me when you enjoyed an episode and you post it on your IG story. Send it to your friends. Rate my show. Um, Let me know that you enjoyed it. Shoot me a DM on Instagram. I would really appreciate it. I know it's just an itty bitty effort on your side, but it means the world to me. So, yeah, thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being a listener. Thank you for looking at this video if that's what you choose to do. This podcast has really been going strong for me. It brings so much joy. Um, and yeah, I'm just so excited to have you here. Anyways, let's get into it, okay? So, I think it's best if I start with a little story before the crisis happened because that story is what led to the crisis. So last year I was still working as a teacher and I was commuting hours each day, right? And as I was like trying to get by during this commute, I would listen to a lot of podcasts. And I came across this one podcast where women were talking, or it was an episode. It was just an episode about sex. It was an episode about kinks, about fetishes, about fantasies, and just really knowing yourself more sexually. Mind you, I've always been a very sexual person, always very sexually liberated. It's been a thing for me to talk about, to experience. It's just always brought so much joy, right? It's been something I've never felt shame for, and always had conversations with friends. People would come to me and ask for advice about sex and just, share their sex life with me. Anyways, as I'm listening to this episode, I'm realizing there is quite a bit that I do not know about my husband sexually. And all of a sudden I had this desire. I'm like, I really, really want to know him sexually, like really want to know him. We've always had great sex. Our sex life has always been something very fun, very organic. Yet I felt like there was a layer that I didn't know about that was super exciting to me because I'm such a sexual person. And I felt like, okay, I have to bring this to him. I have the desire to get to know him better. Now, mind you, me uttering this desire, the universe is like, done. All right, you want to get to know your husband more? Let's shift everything in your lives so that you can get your husband, that you can get to know him better. And this is when the crisis happened, right? My husband has had trauma that he experienced in his life around sexuality and in his childhood that he never fully addressed. Um, And because he never addressed it, it would come up throughout his life and it would daunt him, and then he would just push it back to the side. He would figure it out a little bit. He would deal with it a little bit, but it would never his nervous system never increased the capacity to actually deal with it, right? That's really what it was. Mind you, when the crisis between us happened, we did not know anything about nervous system regulation. So one day, out of the blue, literally out of the blue, my husband walks up to me and says, "Hey, I've been feeling some type of way over the last few days, and I can't ignore it because it's been coming up in my life for quite a while now, and I really have to deal with it. But in order to deal with it, I need to be by myself. Like, I think we have to get a divorce." And that just rocked my world. Obviously, because up until that point, him and I have had a very nice marriage. We loved each other. My husband, he would talk about me to other people as if I was the best thing that's ever happened to him all the time. Like, he proposed to me after just dating for 6 months. Actually, after just dating for a month, he told me to move in with him. Like, that's how convicted he felt about me. And obviously, that's how I felt about him too. Like, it was just really beautiful. Um, and it just always felt like such a good match, right? So when he walked up to me and said, "I have to deal with this and I can't deal with this with you because it doesn't feel right. I need to get a divorce." Now, like I said, that was a complete shock to me because that was nothing I ever planned for, nothing I wanted. And as we were dealing with that, I realized if we get a divorce, it doesn't just mean that our marriage is falling apart and that our family structure will change. It means that I'm falling apart. Because I had placed his approval as the foundation of myself. Like, I had made him approving of me, loving me, made my worth. So now he took that away, and I was left with literally nothing. I really felt like if he leaves me, I can't be okay. I'm gonna die, right? My life is over. I won't be okay. Like, that was the message that I was telling myself. And the 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 thing, so as we were navigating all of this, I'm like, wait, can we just pause for a second? Can we talk about it? Let's figure it out together. We are strong enough to figure this out. And we've had couples therapy in place. We've gone to a therapist for quite a bit at that time because we wanted that additional support. We wanted our marriage to really flourish. Um, and as we were navigating this, we did have a lot of support from our therapist. She was like really focused on keeping us grounded in who we were and how much we loved each other, knowing that we could expand the container of the marriage. And this was my stance from the beginning. I was like, what you're dealing with to me is not grounds for divorce. And I'm not going to go into the depth of his story, but just to let you know, what came up for my husband was that he's bisexual. Now, I just need to bask in this for a second because I think it's so hot. And I didn't know how much I wanted to be married or with a guy who's bisexual until he told me. And I remember when he told me that he was having same-sex attractions, I was like, that is so fucking hot. So I was like, let's totally do this. Like, let's fantasize. Let's talk about it. Let's bring this in. Let's make some room for this, right? But it was a struggle because he believed if this is how he felt, if he had same-sex attractions, he couldn't be with me. Like, he felt it was wrong to bring this part of him into our marriage. And I was like, no, this is totally what I want. I want to get to know you more. I want to know this type of stuff about you. So it was, but I knew that, me being supportive is great, but I also knew there had to be this, he had to come to this to himself. Like, he had to accept this part about him for himself. I cannot accept it for him, right? I can accept it. I can cherish it. I can love it. But if he doesn't do it, then there's always going to be split energy. And because he's never dealt with it his whole life, like he's always ran from that part of him, it became this big monster. So, months passed as we were navigating the struggle. And it was really intense because my trauma came up, like this wound of abandonment, of being left, that was really rooted in my childhood. That came up for me, navigating this. if he doesn't love me, who am I? Am I even worthy to be loved? Can I love myself? Like, I went on this journey to really love myself and to approve of myself. And like, it started in the summer and it lasted for months. It was, I think the thick of it was over after a few weeks, but it didn't leave us. Like, it kept going because it was a back and forth. It was a back and forth between his beliefs of what a man was supposed to be and the man that he truly is, of what his father said and approved of, the homophobia he grew up around, and who he is, and what he thought marriage should look like, what we thought marriage should look like, and what our marriage was evolving into. Um, it was a lot of duality. I've been talking about duality quite a bit. There's duality in everything. So it was a lot of duality in the struggle. Um, and after months of back and forth, it finally landed in him. So during that time, we learned about nervous system regulation. We learned how to release trauma from our bodies. We learned how to integrate the shadows and the monsters that we create and actually love and accept them. Right? We learned all of that. So as he was doing this work, he was finally able to integrate all of the pieces of who he is, that he can have same-sex attractions, that he can be bisexual, and he can fucking love me and be with me, that he can fantasize or talk about these things with me and have a wildly fulfilling sex life with me. So that kind of is the story, right? And as you know, obviously we didn't get a divorce because we're still married. But like I said, the story itself is just a story. I mean, it was a wild ride. And I guess I do want to go back a little bit and just emphasize how painful it was. During that time, during the thick of it, whenever people asked me how I was doing, all I could think about was trauma. I felt so traumatized by everything that was going on. Because everything shifted, and all of a sudden he didn't look at me with love and with commitment and devotion. He looked at me as if I was the enemy, as if I was keeping him from being his authentic self, even though I just felt like, you can be your authentic self in this marriage, in this container. Like, that works. Believe me, trust me. So it was really, really difficult to navigate. And what I was struggling with a lot, I grew up with this idea, and I'm going to do a whole episode around that topic specifically, but I grew up with this idea of the one, right? It was kind of reinforced when I was at church, and I was in this church where people would tell me, yeah, God is going to send you the right husband and he's going to be perfect and everything. That idea was kind of exciting to me. But I also really limited myself to, I have to find the one. And if I'm with somebody who's not the one, then I'm going to miss out on the one. And how do I know if he's the one? And according to like these Christian principles, there were certain things that had to be in place in order for the person to be the one. And then, obviously Hollywood kind of like paints this picture of the one. And if he's the one, things are easy. If he's the one, then you will never really struggle. If he's the one, and things just fall into place and everything is just butterflies. And that is just absolutely not true. But that was the story that I held. So when we were facing, and this was the first 5 years of our marriage, it was perfect. Not perfect, but really great. Like, really no big issues, shit coming up here and there, but we wasn't really tripping about that. We were good. So when this crisis came up last year and he asked for a divorce, I was like, he can't be the one, because if he was, he wouldn't question what we have. If he was the one, that he would know that he could be in this marriage and be his authentic self. He would know that we could figure this out together. So I was really scared because, also having a lot of religious trauma, thinking, oh my God, God is punishing me because I'm in the wrong relationship and this is horrible. And I have to leave him. I guess I have to leave him. I guess divorce is the right thing. If this is what's in the air, I guess this is the route that we must go. But what I stumbled across was the Instagram account where two women were talking about like navigating this stuff in your relationship and not being 100% sure. And what really came up for me was that I can trust myself. I can trust myself to be in this relationship if this is the relationship that I want to be in. If I can trust myself that I want to be with him because he feels good, because we have our values align, because we have children together, because we love each other, because I think he's the hottest man on earth. I can trust myself that this is the relationship that I want to be in, and I can commit to that, right? And if I'm receiving the same level of commitment, then we can trust that this is what we want and what we want to create. And as we're creating this, there are no rules to what this is going to look like. That was really, really important for me because that was actually the very first time that I said, I can trust myself. Like I'm actually capable of making really good decisions for myself, which I was really afraid of because in the past, every man that I've been with before him has cheated on me, was very abusive, beat on me. I was stuck in a lot of relationships that kind of like traumatized me. And as I was navigating these relationships, I felt like I couldn't trust myself, right? But then when I came out of this last very abusive relationship, I told myself never again. So here I was dealing with this guy that's trying to leave me, even though he says he loves me, even though he says I'm the one, even though he's over the moon. That was really difficult, but coming or grounding myself in this, I can trust myself, and I can trust myself if we actually do get a divorce, that I still made the right decision in terms of that was the relationship that I wanted to be in. And just because it didn't work out doesn't mean that I failed, doesn't mean that it was wrong. It just means it transformed, and that I can trust myself down the road. If anyone ever decides to break this up, like I can trust myself that I'm still in the place that I want to be, and this is my path, and that I can enjoy it, and that I can grow, and that I can be okay and safe if things get hard again. That was probably one of the biggest lessons that I learned during this time. Now, something else that I learned about myself was more about sex. And here it's so funny to me when I think about how all of this played out, because I had this desire to get to know him more sexually, right? So I'm sitting here while he's telling me that he is bisexual, and I'm like, this is so fucking hot. Like, I love this. And as we were navigating, okay, how can we make this work? We were possibly talking about, okay, maybe we can open up a relationship a little bit so we can explore, so we can see what this is really about. And as we were talking about that, I was like, why do I think it's so hot? Like, why does it turn me on that my husband is having sex with somebody else? Like, just the idea of it. And why do I get turned on by that? The thought of having sex with somebody else. And I realized that it is, and I had kind of like from that podcast that I listened to when I first felt like I wanted to get to know him better, they were talking about relationship orientation, the difference or the spectrum of monogamy and non-monogamy. And I realized the reason why I get so turned on by it, the reason why I actually feel like I want to have sex with other men, even though I'm married and I love my husband and I love the sex that we have, is because I am non-monogamous by nature. I could definitely deal and handle a non-monogamous relationship. And realizing that about myself changed everything. Because when I was in past relationships, now mind you, these men weren't necessarily good for me, but I didn't really know that back then. But every single relationship that I was in, at some point, I would start fantasizing and dreaming about having sex with other men. Not in the context of, I just don't want to be with him anymore. But like, yeah, what we have is good. But what about somebody else, right? And when I would have these thoughts, I would just label it as, you're just a whore. You're just a horrible person. You're just a slut. Like, you're not even meant for marriage. You're not meant for relationships. That's why you feel this way, because good women, good wives, good girlfriends don't feel this way. And I would also tell myself, well, you probably feel this way because you're not with the one. Because when you're with the one, you're not going to feel this way. No way. So then I met my husband. I met the one. I met the guy that I thought was just perfect for me. And like I said, I can only reiterate it a thousand times. Our sex is great. But at some point, the same thoughts would come back, the same desire, the same like, what if just a one night stand? What if just a permission slip here? And I would really feel a lot of shame around these thoughts. I really did. I thought I don't love him enough. Maybe there is something wrong with our sex life. Maybe there's something wrong with me. It would just like reinforce or reinstate this belief that I held that I was a bad person, that I'm not a good wife, that I can't be a good wife. And just a lot of shame that I held around this belief and, around me. But during this crisis and what I had learned about us sexually and what I had learned about sex before, I realized, no, I'm actually just non-monogamous. Like, this is literally a thing. And I think that was one of the biggest reliefs I had ever had, because all of a sudden I could let go of all of this shame, of all of this guilt, of all of this, are you with the wrong person? Are you doing something wrong? Is something not okay? It was so liberating. I feel like it was probably not as much, but very similar to my husband accepting his sexuality, me accepting this part about me, about my sexuality. And so I kind of like dealt with that on my own. And then at some point, I told my husband, I really felt like I need him to know this about me, because I am a very sexual person and I don't want to hide this anymore. It doesn't mean he has to know every single thing I've ever done, every guy I've ever slept with, every fantasy that I have. But I feel like there has to be room for my authentic self, my authentic expression of sex. And so I told him. And I remember after I told him that this is how I feel about me, the next day, that evening was a really great conversation between him and I. He was like, okay, cool. This is awesome. Like, yeah, we had a very sexy conversation that evening. But I remember waking up the next day and feeling so much shame, because I just felt like, you cannot tell your husband that. You cannot show him this quote unquote slutty side. Like, he's going to lose respect for you. He's not going to be attracted. This is what I thought. This is what came up for me, because this is what I had believed my whole life. And I know that a lot of women, a lot of us believe that. We believe that we have to hide parts of ourselves, our authentic expression and our sexual authentic expression, in order not to intimidate men. So I woke up feeling so much shame around telling him that. I went back to him and I told him. He's like, absolutely not. No. In fact, I think that's hot. It's like, no, you can totally tell me that. You can totally be that. It's fine. And, I was like reassuring him, like, that doesn't mean I'm about to cheat on you. I don't want to leave you. I love what we have. I actually want to protect what we have, but I do feel the need that this part is brought into the conversation. And what all of this has created is this incredible container of container of marriage that we now have, where we can move and be who we really are. And we can share the dirty things. We can share the sexy things. We can be vulnerable and say, hey, you know what? Actually, that really turns me on. And then we play with it and we try to make it happen. And we, just bring in some of our fantasies. And what we call this is, we call a relationship now hot monogamy. Like, it actually is a term. It means you invite the shadow of the third without actually inviting the third. Because my husband and I, our struggles with the parts of our sexuality were actually just about us accepting them for ourselves, right? And giving these parts of us room within ourselves to live. to exist, to desire, to fantasize. Because what we both feel like, we love what we have. We love our unity. We love our marriage. We want to protect this at all times. So for both of us, it was pretty clear we don't want to open up a relationship. I don't know if we ever will feel the desire to do so. But right now, the way things are, they're great. We do not want to expand it to open it up for other people, right? Because when you open up, it's totally possible. It's totally possible to do that in an ethical way, but it is a lot of work. So we just really felt like hot monogamy is where it's at. And it really is where it's at for us. It's been amazing. It's been so much fun to have this concept of hot monogamy and, like I said, sharing fantasies and just enhancing our sex life and to really be our true authentic self. And I just really love talking about this story because it is such a beautiful story, an example of alignment, of how the universe works and manifests and shifts everything in your life in order for these aligned things to happen, right? I had the desire to get to know him more deeply, especially sexually. The crisis happens where things seemed like they were falling apart, but really what it was, everything was falling into alignment. Everything was falling into place. And along the way, it wasn't just that we got to know each other better sexually. No, our whole marriage changed. Our whole marriage improved. Every single thing about it. And I really got to learn how to love myself, how to be the true love, the one for me. And we learned how to release trauma. We learned how to release and be with our emotions. We learned to be fully human, like to experience the full spectrum of human emotions and to set ourselves free from limiting beliefs and conditioning and trauma and emotions that were so scary that we weren't ready to feel. Like we set ourselves free. And then on top of that, during these crises that we had, we also learned that we wanted to do our own thing, that we no longer wanted to work for somebody else, and that we really want to step into alignment in a professional world and pursue or dream or passion. And that's been a journey, right? But all of it was started with the desire, the crisis, and then how everything just fell into alignment. And I think this is where I want to end it here today. I know this is a very personal story, and it was actually it was kind of difficult for me to come to to really come to the conclusion to tell this story because I had the desire for quite a bit, but I was so scared. I was like, wow, this is so personal. I can't do that. Nobody wants to hear this. I shouldn't be talking about my personal life this way, but it feels good. It feels so good to share the side of me, to share the story, because like I said, I love it. It's such a great example. There's so much wisdom, so much juicy wisdom in this story. There's so much that we learned and just ways that we expanded that we could have never imagined. Never. Like even when everything started, I had no idea that our marriage was going to unfold into what it is now. I didn't even know that was possible. It is so beautiful. Anyways, that's my story for today. I am going to continue the conversation around sex and non-monogamy because I think there's more to talk about. People, we all need to know who we really are sexually. And by that, I don't mean sexual orientation like homosexuality or bisexuality or heterosexuality. What is your relationship orientation? That's definitely going to be the theme of my next episode. I hope you enjoyed listening to the story. If you did, please let me know. Rate this show, subscribe to the show, tag me in stories, share it with some friends that that you think can benefit from it, and just really get curious about yourself. Who are you really sexually?